Have you always wanted to play an encounter at the sea? Want to run some pirate-themed campaign, or maybe represent a small island or dock? Well, don't worry, because with today's craft you can do all that and more. The cheapest way of making a water surface. This is the first video in a small series where I plan to build a ship, modular docks, and some other things that fit to the theme or that you request. But enough talking, grab your tools because we're starting! First, you need to get a board. You have many options here, different types of wood, foam core or vinyl. I choose a fiber board measuring 60 by 80 centimeters. This size gives me enough space to place two ships and allowed for boarding actions. It also gives me enough space to set up some docks later on. By the way, in a future video in the same series, I will show you how to make a playable ship. You saw a small one in the intro, and now I'm building a slightly larger one. Alright, let's continue. The first step is to mix PVA glue with water. You need to make a fairly liquid mixture, which we will spread over the entire board with a large brush. Next, we will cover everything with toilet paper. Don't worry about the texture, as it will disappear once it's wet. When the entire board is covered, we will continue applying the mixture until everything is soaked. We will tap gently with the brush to avoid tearing the paper, making sure to pay attention to the joints between papers and any places where there might still be some texture. With a well-soaked brush, we will push the paper in some areas to simulate waves. We press gently so the paper slides and bunches up, forming small ridges. In some spots, the wood might be exposed, so we can place small extra pieces of paper to cover it. We will let all this drying for now. Once it's hardened, use a knife to trim all the excess. Make sure to use a new blade. I didn't, and I tore some paper in parts of the board. Alright, I made a bit of a mess on the table with the glue earlier, so before painting, I'm going to elevate the board a little with a couple of pieces of foam. Well, I confess that this wasn't planned, and that's why you didn't see it while I was talking on screen. When I was editing the video, I felt like I was missing something, so I decided to make some sea rocks that can be placed wherever you want on your waterboard. The first step is to gather foam scraps. We will do this in a very similar way to the rocks I showed you how to make in this video. You can see it in more detail there, but we will make a few modifications to better suit our waterboard. We will create several piles with shapes that we find interesting. Next, we will glue the pieces together using PVA glue and toothpicks to make the connection stronger and prevent the pieces from moving while we cut them. While the glue is still wet, we will run our future rocks through the hot wire cutter. We will make several passes in zigzag motion, trying to create organic shapes and avoid too many sharp edges. In the video I mentioned earlier, you can see this process in much more detail. Once everything is ready, we will cut some cracks with the help of a knife. Next, we will make several passes with our foil ball to texture the piece. The texture doesn't need to be uniform. It's better to apply it to the smoother, more exposed areas. Now we will use a pencil to enlarge the cracks we made earlier. I prefer to do this after the foil ball because pressing the foam can close the cracks a bit, and I want them to remain well defined. Since we're not adding a base this time, we will screw a large screw into the bottom to add weight. This will improve their stability, making them easier to handle on the game board. Finally, I will use a bit of a filler to hide some of the joints that were too visible. This isn't mandatory and you can do it during the priming step, but in my case I prefer to do it in this way. As you've seen, the building part today was extremely simple, but the magic will happen now, with the painting. But before picking up the brushes, if you want to support me so I can continue making videos like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe and ring the bell. Okay, let's paint! Now we will paint everything with dark blue mixed with PVA as a primer. I used two shades of blue, doing a wet blend as I painted to give it an uneven effect. To do this, prepare the paints and alternate them using the same brush, trying to create a gradient effect between the areas you paint with one shade or the other. Since some of the paper zones were a bit obvious, I decided to add some extra pieces. This time I tore the edges so they wouldn't look straight and used a mix of PVA glue with blue and black paint and water. This way we add more variation to the board while hiding the joints. Once everything is dry, apply a wash of blue ink to blend the board's colors. This is taking shape. When it dried, I decided to apply a black wash to darken everything, then build my color scheme using dry brushing. When the ink is dry, do a pass with an intermediate blue, aiming for a medium coverage so all the previous paint layers show through. Next, a dry brush with light blue. This will be very dry, as we just want to highlight the paper's wrinkles and waves. Finally, with pure white, do a dry brush on the waist to simulate foam. I also did some light passes on some points of the board, but try not to overdo it. At the end, I think I add a bit too much white, but I'm quite happy with the final result. Now we just need to cover everything with PVA glue. This step seals everything and gives the water a glossy effect. You can also mix the glue with a bit of glossy varnish or glossy Mod Podge. I went the cheap road, and I must say the result is more than decent just with PVA glue. Alright, as always, we're going to start by using a mixture of black acrylic paint and PVA glue. You might need to apply a couple of coats to ensure everything is well covered. Once it's dry, we will use a makeup brush to dry brush with a neutral grey. We're aiming to cover a certain surface area while leaving the black visible in the crevices and deeper parts of the rock. Now let's prepare some inks, and we will give these rocks a more marine touch compared to the ones we've made before. I'm going to use a couple of shades of green and a navy blue. We will use two brushes to apply them to avoid mixing the colors too much. Start by applying the greens, wet blending them into each other on various parts of the rock. For the blue, focus on the entire lower edge, as it will be the part in contact with the water. Also add it here and there in smaller streaks, and you can even mix it a bit with the greens. Finally, once the inks are completely dry, we will apply a very light dry brush of pure white to highlight the edges. Try to make vertical strokes, taking care to not cover too much the ink wash effect, as we're just looking to enhance the piece. And with that, we are done. Great! We are done! The truth is that this isn't the fanciest way to simulate water, but it's the simplest and the cheapest. You have other options, like doing a resin pour or using some glossy Mod Podge, or other products depending on the finish you're looking for. Now let me tell you that with this method we've used, this board is basically indestructible. If you have any questions about this build, know another way to do it and wanted to share, or have any ideas or suggestions for future videos related to the maritime theme, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below, I will be reading them. Also remember that in the description there's a link to my itch.io where I post one-page adventures and hand-drawn maps for free. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoy it and feel encouraged to give it a try. Have a great week and see you in the next video.